Hi, Sean here from the Trusted Agent Podcast, and thank you for joining us on today's show, where each week we talk to experts both inside the industry and outside the real estate industry to gain their unique perspectives on what they believe real estate agents can do to build their credibility, efficiencies, and connections with others. A huge shout out to our sponsor, Rezo Real Estate Sales Online, who's absolutely revolutionizing how real estate agents deal with prospective buyers and vendors. Their online platform that manages the offers and acceptance process is simple, easy to use, giving time back to the agents so they can do what they do best. All right, so stick with me and let's see who today's guest on the show is. Today, I'm joined by Ashleigh Goodchild, who is the owner of Soko Realty and the founder of Property Profiling Perth. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here, Ashleigh.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
And I got to say, when we reached out to you, and I'm so glad that you accepted the offer, it was an interesting perspective that we had when we were talking for about that 5 minutes about what you think it takes to build trust within the real estate industry. But before we get into all that, would you mind giving us, the listeners, to those who haven't heard of you, a bit of a background?
Sure. So I have been in real estate for over 20 years and started Soko Realty at quite a young age when I was 23, and always had a property management focus and an investor education love as well. So property profiling is something that I started specializing in only about 6 months ago. And it is really just about helping investors buy with confidence. And we've had such a amazing property boom in Perth. And I found that there was a real lack of confidence with people buying and a lack of education. And we are dealing in Perth with a lot of Eastern State investors buying over here, and just found value basically in providing a service to them.
So how did that come to you? Did it come to you as a light bulb moment? What was your business like? And then how did you pivot to the property profiling?
Yeah, so we have always been known for educating landlords, and it's always been something that we've been very passionate about doing. And when we started getting investors wanting to buy properties in Perth, to be honest, there was just so many of them, and it was unsustainable basically to help so many people in 1 month. So we
hold on. So like WA has been going off, like the market there for quite some time, and I believe your business is up 20% as well, and some of the toughest times that not all real estates have seen as well. But what sort of numbers are you talking about when you said it's not sustainable, when you're getting these investor inquiries? 5, 10?
40 in August.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I wasn't really counting, and then I thought I'll count for September and see how many investors are actually calling me wanting to buy in Perth. And for September, I got to the 7th of September and I had 34 investors already, and it was just ridiculous. And they all had the same questions. They were all buying the same sort of property, and I was repeating myself about 40 to 60 times per day was my average phone call bill for that month.
So is that where you go, I need automation, organization, or, I got a business here?
Yeah, exactly. There was absolutely a separate business opportunity, and that's how Property Profiling Perth came about. And it's been so successful, and the interest from investors has, from Queensland, Melbourne, Sydney, even Adelaide as well, it's just been absolutely massive. And it's really, really great to just be able to help them and to be on their side.
I'd like to ask a question in terms of people coming and looking inwards into the Western Australian market and contacting you. What do you think, why do you think you stood out versus other realtors, or maybe they're contacting everyone, but how do you think that they chose you?
They chose me, to be honest, was from LinkedIn and my contacts through LinkedIn. And then they just started talking. It was, there's a property advisory company. There's now 4 buyers agents, a couple of mortgage brokers, and they all refer to me. And even to the point where I had one property that I helped a client buy just recently, and I was dealing with that real estate agent who was selling the property. And one of the clients who purchased, my client missed out, but he had someone who, a buyer's agent who did purchase it. He actually put that buyer's agent in touch with me to help with the client. So everyone just started talking. So now I've basically got quite a big referral network and their clients. So I'm very much, I won't go off track too much, but just I'm very big on looking after your database's database. So my database might be property advisory companies, buyers agents, mortgage brokers, but it's their database I'm actually helping.
Yeah, well, that's smart. It's really funneling it, isn't it? So I imagine that investors, when they're looking for someone they can trust, a trusted advisor, they're going to be looking for someone who's got credibility, good organization and efficiencies going for themselves, and a strong connection or with others, or gets them on their level. You mentioned that many are asking the same amount of questions.
Yeah, they did. And I started joking with them and preempting all the questions that they were about to ask. And we then have a good little chuckle about it. And on one of the education videos that I did on YouTube, I actually talked about these questions and said, when someone said to me, what should an investor be asking when they're looking for a property in WA? And I said, well, they can stop by asking the 20 same questions, because that's just annoying for anybody, any real estate agent. And they can actually start telling me why they're investing, budgets, what their plan is. Do they plan on buying one? Do they plan on buying four? Do they want something that needs renovation? Do they want something they don't have to spend money on? That's what's important to me, not how many rooms have built-in robes and are there power lines out the front?
I'm being reminded of blind dates, or the TV show First Dates, where a couple gets together, meeting for the first time, and someone's just asking questions instead of getting on the same page. Like, do I even like you? Do we have similar interests? Do we have similar values? Do you have a future? Is it aligned with mine? And so I think what you're also suggesting is this is building a relationship, and maybe treat it like a first date. Your objective is to get to a second date, not try to give it all up at once, right?
Yes, that's right. And I laugh when you say that, because not everybody's purpose of that date is to have a second date.
Yeah, that's true. Depends on the circumstances and who you're sitting opposite with, I guess.
Absolutely. But, it's absolutely right. It's that connection. And I feel that these clients and these investors are developing that connection with me already through my educational videos on YouTube, on LinkedIn. They feel they know me. They already feel like they can trust me because they've seen my education before. And they have already worked out that they're on the same page as me. Therefore, that's why they've called me. They already feel comfortable with me from the very start. They're not calling me as a cold lead. They're calling me as a warm lead because they've already seen me.
Because they've seen your digital assets, they've seen your education, your videos, and that's all helped your brand profile, which in turn helps your credibility.
Correct. And being very transparent with everything along the way as well is number one.
Yeah. So if all those things are leading you to be a trusted agent, what are some of the areas that you think as an industry that we could get better? And I think you offer a unique perspective because of the angle of which you're coming in. Do you want to explain the two sides and of the parties here?
Well, if you think about it, and like in the last couple of months, I've literally dealt with hundreds and hundreds of investors, and you've got like a football team, you've got a couple of people on the seller's team, the seller and the real estate agent, and then you've got the poor buyer who is on his own in the game. It's really hard to feel like you're on a level, even playing field. So creating an extra person on their team, which is myself, or maybe it's a buyer's agent, but it's someone they trust to even up the playing sides is very, very important. That's my number one tip for them. And and I'm finding as well, like even for me, dealing with so many real estate agents, they all work so differently. And it's very hard to trust who's doing it right. And I think the answer to that is the real estate agents are all doing it right. But they all have their own little quirky way of marketing. But I know that now. So I know that there is an agent who markets his properties really low, but to get big numbers and then sells it for 100K more. I know that there's some agents who are a bit more old school and still advertise high, but then are willing to negotiate down a little bit. Then you've got, while they might have very similar conditions, they all are a little bit different in that some want the building inspection done after finance approval, some want it done from day one. There's just an inconsistency. So as an agent myself, I am okay with that, but I do have to explain it to my investors all the time. Listen, that is okay. What they've done in the contract is fine, and I'm comfortable with it. And I pass on that confidence to them, because otherwise, if they're putting offers in a couple of properties and thinking all the agents are doing it differently, how do you know who's doing it right or if someone's doing it wrong?
Yeah, I could see how, as a buyer, that would be a huge unknown for me. With the vendor, it's a little bit more transparent. The real estate agent will say, this is our game plan, this is how I'm going to operate. And, through the whole listing appointment, they're kind of setting those expectations early. But with the buyer, you're totally at the odds of the agents and not sure where they're coming from. I could see why you'd be such a valuable asset to have in their corner.
And then you sort of think about it, why should the buyer trust the agent? Because the agent is working and getting paid by the seller. Like it's a very natural psychological thought to have.
Yeah. Okay. So we talk about trust through transparency within Rezo. So I think that you and I were talking about another tip might be to setting expectations early.
Yeah, I've dealt with the best agents that I've dealt with lately are the ones that have a database for buyers, and you're booked into home opens. You get regular SMSs if there's anything that's changed. There's a process, and there are still a lot of agencies that don't have a process and are just winging it, and they're working reactively and not proactively. So by that, I mean, it's just a very old school way of working. Reactively meaning that I've got to call, I've got to check to see if the home open's still happening on Saturday in case they've taken it off. I've got to be the one contacting them, which is fine because it's a hot market. But there are some agencies that have fantastic procedures in place, and I'm notified of every step of the way prior to having to make that phone call, especially when it comes to home opens, buy appointments, changes of price, changes of times. They're the best agents that I've seen. Yeah.
Now, hot market or cold market, I think solid processes should always be used, because the buyers today are the vendors tomorrow. They can be on your database forever. So you're going to leave an impression anyway. I guess as an agent, you can get to choose which impression you want to leave. So,
yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So delivering on what you promise, I think is kind of what you're saying. If you say there's going to be an open, do the open, or notify people if there's any changes that come from that.
Yeah, and like really frustrating for investors buying at the moment, and it's something that has come up quite a lot. If I can share a couple of stories, but
Please.
One story is that I call up an agent. I've got an investor that wants me to have a look through and do a pre-purchase inspection. And they say to me, no worries, home opens at 12 o'clock on Saturday and I can't get in any earlier. That's the only time available. That's no problems. Book it into my diary. And then I go and check the property on Saturday morning, because now I know I've got to check the property on Saturday morning because agents are cancelling them. And I see the property's been sold. Call the agent. Hey, you told me there was going to be a home open. Yep, the property's sold because someone's put an offer in sight unseen and we're cancelling it, and they've accepted it. So the problem with that is, granted, it was probably a great offer. I'm sure it was, but it's very frustrating for investors who have done the right everything, booked in, made the phone call, and it gets cancelled last minute because someone's put a higher offer. I don't know what the right answer is, whether the agent should still hold off to the home open because they said there was going to be a home open. Do they educate the seller and say, hey, we have had a lot of interest, a lot of people are coming on Saturday, I think we should still have it? Or I don't know, or do you
or reach out to everyone on the database saying, hey, we have an offer, if it's looking to be accepted, unless you'd like to put in something before this close off date. I mean,
correct. And if you had efficiencies and a database, you could give those people the heads up that there has been an offer received, so that so let us know that the home open's going to potentially going to be cancelled because an offer's been received. That would be a lot better, and that just comes down to the efficiencies as well. I actually had one the other day on the weekend, and I had spoken to the agent on Friday, confirmed an appointment he made with the tenant for the Saturday for me. I go for an hour drive to the property and he still meets me there. That was fine. And when we get to the door and I introduce myself to the tenant, he turns around to me and goes, actually, I probably should tell you now that we've just sold the property this morning. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I didn't say this to him. I was obviously very polite, but I was frustrated because he could have called me that morning and told me. He could have told me on the Friday that there is negotiations happening, or he could have told his seller, hey, I have got one more appointment this morning, let's just hold off till lunchtime. And they didn't. So now it's okay for me to deal with that because I'm an agent, so I know how it works, but very frustrating for a buyer if a buyer had to deal with that. And again, that comes down to efficiencies. It comes down to the database. Maybe this person didn't have my number because they're flying on, they're just winging it. That might have been the reason why, I don't know, but it still comes down to efficiencies and process, which was lacking.
Yeah. And I could feel right now that the sponsors are poking me here going, this is where you mentioned Rezo, because Rezo can help with all of that. Centralized database, email communications, SMS. So more on that later. You can click on the links below if you want to hear more about Rezo. All right. So you've given us some really cool tips and tricks there. So you're talking about building strategic partnerships to help your pipeline. You're talking about building digital assets and educational videos to give people an opportunity to get to know you before reaching out to you and feel like, are you their person to look after them? And that in turn builds your brand profile, which leads to credibility. You're talking about a need for efficiencies for when things are changing, or just, keeping everybody up to date along the whole process as well. And you talk about consistency. Whilst every agent could have their own marketing plan or the way or approach, setting those expectations up front is certainly going to help all parties in consideration. That's excellent.
Absolutely. And I guess for me, and I know how different agents work, so I can adapt my way of working with those people. But yeah, from a vendor's point of from a buyer's point of view, very, very hard to understand the different ways that people work. But ultimately, I don't think I think it's great that agents have lots of different ways of marketing and things work for different people, but I do feel that behind the scenes efficiency is definitely the biggest thing to be a trusted agent.
And evening up the sides, can't forget that one either.
And evening up the sides, absolutely. You definitely need more people on your team.
Yeah, absolutely. I bought 2 investment properties not too long ago here in New South Wales, and there's certainly times I thought I need someone else in my corner. I feel like I don't have that transparency that I really was looking for, or guidance.
Yeah, and I feel like as well, like I'm on the selling agents team as well, because I do help buyers behave appropriately, I guess is probably the best way of saying it, in that I tell them about don't put too many conditions on your contract in this market. Yeah, that, you know, the agent's not even going to look at them. So I feel like I am making it a bit easier for that selling agent, being that middle person with them as well. So I educate the investors with their conditions. Don't go putting silly conditions in because you'll just miss out on it. But also letting them know that in Perth we have different ways of buying properties. So we don't have the cooling off periods. We don't negotiate the sale after your building inspection's been received. And I don't know whose job that is to educate, whether it's the buyer's job to educate themselves or if it's the seller's, if it's the selling agent's job to educate if they know that it's an interstate buyer. But I guess even if you think about it from a bigger picture, in the whole of Australia, each state's different.
Absolutely.
So you don't know what you don't know. So if you've got an investor or a buyer that's only bought in New South Wales and now buying in WA, how do they know that the process is different here? So
I think you just came up with your next digital asset. Top tips for investing in WA, what you need to know.
Exactly. Actually, I'll write that one down. But it's true. You don't know what you don't know. So how do they know that? That they can't negotiate. I mean, I know now. So now I preempt it. So every time they call me, I say, okay, a couple of things you need to know, and I rattle the 3 top tips off to them. But like I said, people have a different opinion on whether that's a selling agent's job or not their job to advise an interstate buyer.
Yeah, I think if anybody wants to be considered as a trusted agent, and as I know the industry is really passionate about, of lifting that overall public perception, which is undeserving. I don't think, in my experience, I think the industry is full of wonderful, hardworking, passionate professionals. So, but it's all of our responsibility, I think, to provide that trust through transparency of information and sharing with each other as well. Ashleigh, you've done such a great job over the last 20 plus years of building your own teams and educating the industry. And I know of the back of your recent growth of 20% in this market, where some people haven't been experiencing, you've been lending your services in a consultative approach to other real estate agents that are looking to lift in those areas as well. Where else can people reach out to you and get to see you?
So I'm very active on LinkedIn. So that's Ashleigh Goodchild, or the Perth Property Manager. On LinkedIn is my favorite social platform, Sean. So I put all my videos on there. And then you can also head over to propertyprofiling.com for the investor side of things as well. But if anyone wants to connect, feel free to reach out, because I'm a very collaborative person by nature, and definitely do love helping other agents as well, whether it's building their profile or just bouncing ideas around, and how they can also help investors or help their brand. So
excellent. And we see in events around the country or in the state as well?
Around the country. When my children have turned 18, Sean, I'll be around the country. But unfortunately,
how many kids do you have?
Well, it's a funny story, because I've got 3 and my partner's got 3, and we have them all full time. So as
Brady Bunch.
It is definitely the Brady Bunch. And as we are speaking now, I am on day 12 of the 6 kids full time, and I normally count down, because on day 14 they go to their other parents for 48 hours, and then I get to recharge. So yeah, when they're currently age 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So they're little. But no, we at the moment I'm doing some events, or quite a lot of events in WA. I've got a signature series, which is for high-level real estate agents, launching so every 3 months, or every 4 months, sorry for that. And that's really helping educate agents on whether it's personal branding, which all comes down to being trusted on socials and in the industry, and also having efficient businesses as well, which is important. And soon to launch a PM Collective membership as well, which again is for Australia-wide, and to really encourage that and support the industry and real estate agents.
Excellent. Well, that sounds fascinating. When I'm in WA, I want to get to those events, and I certainly want to support you in any way I can for those as well. They sound fascinating. Ashleigh, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure spending some time with you and get to know about your history and hear your thoughts about what we can be doing as an industry as well to lift our profile for everyone to be known as the trusted agent within their local community. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Sean. It's been great.
All right, all the best. Bye.